Prologue. Emily sat in her living room, a place that had once been filled with warmth and laughter, now steeped in an oppressive silence. The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound as she stared blankly out the window. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching the crisp white divorce papers. Each word on the document felt like a dagger to her heart, a stark confirmation of the nightmare she was living. She hadn't seen it coming, not at all. For 10 years, she and Michael had built a life together, navigating the ups and downs with what she believed was mutual love and respect. They had their routines, their inside jokes, their dreams of the future. They were the couple everyone envied, or so she thought. It was a Thursday when everything changed. Emily had woken up, expecting another ordinary day. Michael had left for work as usual, kissing her lightly on the forehead before he walked out the door. But that was the last time she saw him. Hours turned into days, and still there was no sign of him. His phone went straight to voicemail, and there were no messages or emails explaining his absence. "Michael, please call me," she had whispered into the phone, her voice cracking with desperation. "I don't understand what's happening. Just let me know you're okay." But there was no response. She called his office, only to be told that he had taken a leave of absence. His colleagues seemed as baffled as she was. She checked hospitals and morgues, fearing the worst, but there was no trace of him anywhere. Emily's days blurred into an endless loop of waiting and searching. She knocked on neighbors' doors, hoping someone might have seen something, anything, that could explain his disappearance. She even reached out to his family, but they were just as clueless and worried as she was. Months passed, and the hope that he would walk through the door began to wane. She hired a private investigator, spending hours poring over every detail of their life together, trying to find a clue. But even that turned up nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Then, one fateful evening, Emily's world shattered completely. She had been browsing through social media, a futile attempt to distract herself from the pain. A friend's post caught her eye, a photo of Michael, looking happier than she had ever seen him, with a woman she didn't recognize. They were standing in front of a quaint little house, the woman holding a baby in her arms. Her heart pounded in her chest as she clicked on the woman's profile. Her name was Claire, and the more Emily scrolled, the more horrified she became. There were countless photos of Michael and Claire together, celebrating holidays, birthdays, and milestones. He had a new life, a new family, and it was clear he had been living this double life for quite some time. The realization hit her like a freight train. Michael hadn't just left, he had abandoned her for someone else. He had built a new life, while she had been left to pick up the pieces of the one he shattered. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had ever experienced. She felt the tears well up, but something inside her shifted. The Emily, who had been devastated, who had cried herself to sleep night after night, was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by pain and anger. She had loved Michael with everything she had, and he had repaid her with deceit. Now all that love was replaced by a burning desire for revenge. Emily's gaze hardened as she looked at the divorce papers again. She would sign them, yes, but not before she made sure Michael regretted every moment of his betrayal. She was no longer the heartbroken wife. She was a woman on a mission, determined to make him pay for every tear she had shed, every moment of agony she had endured. With a deep breath, Emily set the papers aside and picked up her laptop. She began to make a list, meticulously detailing everything she knew about Michael's new life. Claire their child, his job, their friends. It was all there, laid out before her. The old Emily was dead. In her place stood someone new, someone relentless and cunning. She would take everything from Michael, just as he had taken everything from her. And when she was done, he would be the one left staring out a window, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. Emily closed her laptop, her mind made up. She would start tomorrow. Tonight she allowed herself one last moment of sorrow, letting the tears fall freely. But as the night wore on, the tears dried, and in their place, a steely resolve took hold. Tomorrow, the hunt would begin, and she would not stop until Michael's new life lay in ruins at her feet. Chapter 1. The Disappearance Scene 1. The Vanishing Act. Emily sat at the dining table, staring at the meal she had prepared hours ago. The candles on the table had long since burned down to stubs, and the once steaming dishes were now cold and unappetizing. She glanced at the clock on the wall, its ticking growing louder and more ominous with each passing second. It was nearly midnight, and Michael was still not home. She picked up her phone and dialed his number again, her fingers trembling slightly. The familiar sound of his voicemail greeting filled her with a sense of dread. "Hey, it's me again. Just wondering where you are. Call me when you get this," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She hung up and set the phone on the table, staring at it as if willing it to ring. Anxiety gnawed at her. It wasn't like Michael to disappear without a word. He always called if he was going to be late, even if it was just to let her know he was stuck in traffic. This silence was unlike him, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. She tried to busy herself, tidying up the kitchen, rearranging the cushions on the couch, even flipping through a magazine. But her mind kept drifting back to Michael. Where was he? What had happened to him? The hours dragged on, and finally exhaustion overcame her. She fell asleep on the couch, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. When she woke up the next morning, there were still no messages, no missed calls. She felt a pang of panic as she dialed his number once more, only to be met with the same voicemail greeting. She left another message, her voice tinged with desperation. "Michael, please call me. I'm really worried. Just let me know you're okay." Days turned into a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Emily went to the police, clutching a photo of Michael, her voice trembling as she explained the situation. "My husband is missing. He didn't come home 4 days ago, and I haven't heard from him since." The officer behind the desk gave her a sympathetic look, but shook his head. "Ma'am, I understand you're worried, but it's only been a few days. Adults have the right to go missing if they choose to. There's nothing we can do at this point." Emily's frustration and fear bubbled over. "But this isn't like him. He wouldn't just leave without telling me. Something must have happened to him." The officer sighed. "We'll keep an eye out, but there's not much we can do unless there's evidence of foul play." Defeated, Emily left the police station, her heart heavy with dread. Michael wasn't just missing. He was gone. Scene 2. The search begins. Emily refused to believe that Michael would just leave without a word. She knew him better than anyone, or at least she thought she did. Determined to find answers, she began her own investigation. She started by calling Michael's friends and colleagues, hoping someone might have seen or heard from him. She dialed the number of his best friend, Tom. her heart pounding in her chest. "Hey, Tom, it's Emily. Have you heard from Michael? He's been missing for days." Tom's voice was filled with concern. "No, I haven't. Is everything okay?" "No, it's not," Emily replied, her voice breaking. "He didn't come home, and I can't reach him. I'm really scared, Tom." Tom promised to spread the word and keep an eye out, but days passed with no new information. Emily called Michael's parents, her voice shaky as she explained the situation. "Have you heard from Michael? He's been gone for almost a week now, and I don't know what to do." His mother's voice was filled with worry. "No, we haven't. He would have called us if he was going somewhere. Are you sure he's not just on a work trip?" Emily felt a pang of frustration. "No, he's not on a work trip. I've called his office. They haven't seen him either." His parents promised to call everyone they knew, but as days turned into weeks, there was still no sign of Michael. Emily felt like she was living in a nightmare, the man she loved seemingly vanishing into thin air. Desperate, she hired a private investigator, a grizzled man named Frank with a reputation for finding people. He listened to her story, nodding thoughtfully as he took notes. "I'll find him," Frank promised, his voice steady and reassuring. "Just give me some time." Weeks turned into months, and still, there were no leads. Emily felt like she was drowning, each day a struggle to keep going without any answers. She spent countless hours poring over their life together, searching for any clue that might explain his disappearance. She replayed their last conversation in her mind, looking for any hint that something was wrong, but there was nothing. Michael had been his usual self, affectionate and loving, with no sign that he was planning to leave. The Michael she knew wouldn't do this. He loved her, didn't he? Emily's hope began to wane as the months dragged on. The house felt emptier with each passing day, a constant reminder of the life they had built together and the void his absence had left. One evening, as she sat alone in their bedroom, Emily looked at the photo on her nightstand, a picture of her and Michael on their wedding day, smiling and full of love. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered into the silence, "Where are you, Michael? Please come back to me." But the silence offered no answers, and Emily was left to face another night alone. The ache of his absence, a constant gnawing pain. As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Emily made a silent vow. She would find out what happened to Michael, no matter what it took. She couldn't move on until she knew the truth. And so, she steeled herself for the long and difficult journey ahead, determined to uncover the mystery of his disappearance. Chapter 2. The Discovery Scene 1. The Revelation. Emily sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands, her heart pounding in her chest. The private investigator, Frank, had finally found something after months of dead ends and false leads. He had called her earlier that day, his voice tinged with urgency. "Emily, I think I've found him. He's living in a suburban neighborhood, miles from the city." The drive out to the address Frank had given her felt interminable. She replayed every moment of the past few months in her mind, trying to make sense of it all. The hope that had been slowly fading reignited, burning brighter with each mile she drove. Now, she was here, parked across the street from a quaint suburban house with a neatly trimmed lawn and flower beds bursting with color. It looked like something out of a picture-perfect family magazine. Her heart ached at the sight. She watched the house intently, her eyes scanning every detail. The front door opened, and her breath caught in her throat. Michael stepped out, looking as though he hadn't a care in the world. He looked healthier, happier, even younger than she remembered. But it was what followed that truly shattered her heart. A woman appeared at his side, laughing at something he said. She was holding a small child, a little girl with Michael's eyes and curly hair. Emily felt a pang of nausea. This was his new family. She watched as they interacted, the easy familiarity and warmth between them, a stark contrast to the emptiness she had been living in. Michael lifted the child into his arms, and the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck, giggling. The woman kissed Michael on the cheek before heading back inside, leaving him in the yard with the child. Emily's heart shattered into a million pieces. It was one thing to suspect that he had left her for someone else, but to see it with her own eyes was unbearable. She felt a sob rising in her throat and fought to keep it down. She couldn't fall apart now. She needed answers. Scene 2. Confrontation. Emily waited until Michael was alone, her mind racing with what she would say. She couldn't just let him walk away from everything they had built without confronting him. Her hands shook as she opened the car door and stepped out, her legs feeling like lead as she crossed the street. Michael's back was turned as she approached. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Michael." He turned around, and the color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like he had seen a ghost. "Emily, what are you doing here?" His voice was filled with shock and a tinge of fear. Good, she thought. He should be afraid. "I should ask you the same thing," she replied, her voice cold and steady despite the turmoil inside her. "What the hell is going on, Michael?" He glanced around nervously, his eyes darting back to the house. "Look, Emily, I can explain." "Don't bother," she cut him off, her voice sharp. "I know everything. I've seen enough." Michael swallowed hard, his eyes pleading. "Please, Emily, let me explain." She crossed her arms, her stance defiant. "Explain. Explain how you abandoned me without a word. Explain how you left me to think you were dead or worse, while you started a new life with a new family. How do you explain that, Michael?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking desperate. "It's not what you think. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Emily spat the word out like it was poison. "You disappeared, Michael. You left me to pick up the pieces of our life without any explanation. And now I find you here, playing house with someone else." He took a step towards her, but she backed away, holding up a hand to stop him. "Don't come any closer." Michael stopped, his shoulders slumping. "Emily, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't handle it anymore. I felt trapped, like I was suffocating. And then I met Claire, and everything just changed." Emily's eyes narrowed. "So you decided to just disappear, to leave me in the dark, thinking you were dead." "I know it was wrong," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to face the confrontation, the pain. I thought it would be easier this way." "Easier?" Emily's voice rose in disbelief. "For who, Michael? Certainly not for me. Do you have any idea what I've been through? The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the endless search for answers." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." Emily's anger flared. "Well, you did. You destroyed me, Michael. You destroyed everything we had. And now you're going to pay for it." He looked at her, his eyes filled with regret and guilt. "What are you going to do?" She took a step back, her resolve hardening. "You'll find out soon enough. But know this, Michael. You've made a terrible mistake, and I won't stop until you've paid for every ounce of pain you've caused me." With that, she turned and walked away. leaving Michael standing in the yard, his world starting to crumble, just as hers had. Chapter 3. The Plan Scene 1. Plotting Revenge. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the remnants of last night's takeout scattered around her, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. The once welcoming space now felt like a war room, her laptop open to a blank document, ready to be filled with her plans. Her mind raced with a blend of anger, pain, and a fierce determination. Michael had torn her life apart, and she was going to make sure he paid for every moment of suffering he had caused her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was not the time for emotions. This was the time for cold, calculated action. She opened a browser and began her research. If she was going to destroy Michael's new life, she needed to know everything about it. The first step was to gather information about Claire. Emily navigated to social media, searching for the woman who had taken her place. It didn't take long to find her. Claire's profile was public, filled with pictures and posts about her seemingly perfect life. Emily's heart ached as she saw the smiling faces, the happy family moments, the life that could have been hers. Claire was a graphic designer, Emily learned, working for a small but successful firm in the city. She seemed well liked by her colleagues, judging by the numerous comments and interactions on her posts. Emily scrolled through photos of Claire at work events, birthday parties, and family outings. Each picture was a piece of the puzzle, painting a detailed portrait of the woman Michael had chosen over her. Next, Emily turned her attention to their child. The little girl, Emily learned, was named Lily. She was 3 years old, with Michael's eyes and a head full of curly hair. Claire had posted countless photos of Lily, documenting every milestone from her first steps to her recent birthday party. Emily's heart twisted, with a mixture of sorrow and rage. That should have been her child, her family. Emily spent hours compiling information, creating a detailed dossier on Claire and Lily. She noted their routines, their favorite places, and their closest friends. She gathered everything she could find, from Claire's work address to Lily's daycare. She knew she couldn't just confront them directly. She needed a plan that would hit Michael where it hurt the most, his new family and his reputation. The next step was to dig into Michael's new life. Emily accessed his social media profiles, noting the differences from when they were together. He seemed more open, more public about his life with Claire. She saw pictures of him at family gatherings, at the park with Lily, and at work events. He looked happy, content, as if the years with Emily had never existed. Emily's blood boiled as she clicked through the photos. How dare he look so happy after destroying her life? She needed to find a way to bring him down, to expose him for the liar and cheat he was. She made a list of his colleagues, noting anyone who seemed particularly close to him. She would need to plant seeds of doubt, to make people question his integrity and loyalty. With her research complete, Emily began to formulate her plan. She started by creating a fake social media profile, complete with a carefully curated backstory. She used this profile to befriend Claire, commenting on her posts and slowly ingratiating herself into her online circle. It wasn't long before Claire accepted her friend request, and Emily had access to even more personal details about her life. Emily used this information to sow seeds of doubt. She sent anonymous messages to Claire, hinting at Michael's infidelity. She crafted the messages carefully, including just enough personal details to make them believable. She knew Claire would confront Michael, and that was exactly what she wanted. She needed to create tension, to make Claire question everything she thought she knew about her husband. At the same time, Emily began to undermine Michael at work. Using her fake profile, she connected with some of his colleagues, spreading rumors and planting fake evidence of embezzlement. She knew it would only be a matter of time before someone took the bait and reported him. Michael's reputation at work would be ruined, and he would be left scrambling to clear his name. Emily also targeted their social circle. She created more fake profiles, spreading rumors and lies about Michael's past. She contacted old friends, hinting at his deceit and betrayal. The more people questioned his character, the more isolated he would become. She wanted to strip away everything he had built, to leave him as alone and broken as she had been. Days turned into weeks as Emily meticulously executed her plan. She watched from the shadows as the cracks in Michael's new life began to show. Claire became more withdrawn, her social media posts less frequent and more strained. Michael's colleagues started to distance themselves, whispers of scandal and betrayal spreading through the office. Emily felt a grim satisfaction as she saw the results of her efforts. She had been patient, careful, and methodical. Now, it was only a matter of time before Michael's new life crumbled completely. She would make sure of it. As she sat back, a sense of cold resolve settled over her. This was only the beginning. Michael had taken everything from her, and she would stop at nothing to make sure he paid for every moment of pain he had caused. She closed her laptop, her mind racing with the next steps in her plan. She would not rest until Michael's life lay in ruins just as he had left hers. Scene 2. The First Strike. Emily sat in her dimly lit apartment, the glow from her laptop casting a cold light across her face. She had spent weeks meticulously planning her next move, and now it was time to set it in motion. With a few swift keystrokes, she created a fake social media profile. The profile picture was of a generic, attractive woman, and the details were sparse but believable. She named her new persona Sarah Thompson. Once the profile was complete, Emily began the process of befriending Claire. She sent a friend request and a message, carefully crafted to seem innocent and friendly. "Hi, Claire. I noticed we have a lot of mutual friends and thought I'd reach out. I'm new to the area and looking to make some new connections. Hope we can chat sometime." Emily knew Claire would be cautious at first, but she also knew how lonely motherhood could be and how Claire might appreciate a new friend. Within a day, Claire accepted the friend request and responded warmly. "Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the area. I'd love to chat and maybe meet up for coffee sometime." Emily smiled. Her plan was working. She spent the next few days building rapport with Claire, liking her posts and commenting on pictures of her and Lily. She shared details about her fictitious life, crafting a persona that Claire could relate to and trust. After a week of friendly exchanges, Emily began to sow the seeds of doubt. Using an anonymous messaging app, she sent Claire her first cryptic message. "I thought you should know that not everything is as it seems. Be careful who you trust." Claire was puzzled and slightly alarmed by the message, but she shrugged it off as a random prank. However, Emily was persistent. A few days later, she sent another message, this time more direct. "Do you really know where Michael goes when he's working late? Some things don't add up." Claire's curiosity was piqued, and a seed of doubt was planted. She began to notice little things: Michael's distracted demeanor, the extra hours at work, and the hushed phone conversations. Emily, posing as Sarah, subtly reinforced these doubts in their conversations. "Hey, Claire, you mentioned Michael has been working late a lot. That must be tough. Do you ever worry about what he's up to?" Claire hesitated, but replied, "Yeah, sometimes. but I trust him. I have to. Sarah responded with empathy. Of course. Trust is so important. Just make sure he deserves it. The anonymous messages continued, each one more specific and unsettling than the last. He's been seen with another woman. Ask him about his business meetings. How well do you know his colleagues? Do you know if they cover for him? Claire's trust began to erode. She started questioning Michael more about his whereabouts and his work, but his answers, though seemingly innocent, did little to alleviate her growing suspicion. Within hours, an internal investigation was launched. Michael was called into a meeting with Mr. Daniels and the company's legal team. He walked into the conference room, oblivious to the storm about to hit him. Michael, we've received some very serious allegations against you, Mr. Daniels said, sliding the printed email across the table. You're being accused of embezzlement. We have to suspend you pending an investigation. Michael's mind reeled as he read the accusations, his heart pounding. This isn't true. I've never stolen anything from this company. Someone is framing me. The legal team exchanged glances, skeptical. The evidence suggests otherwise, Michael. We need to conduct a thorough investigation. Until then, you're suspended from your duties. Michael left the office in a daze, his reputation in tatters. News of the investigation spread quickly among his colleagues, whispers of his alleged betrayal and dishonesty following him out the door. He felt the weight of their judgment, their trust in him shattered. At home, the tension with Claire had reached a breaking point. She looked at him with a mix of hurt and disbelief. What's going on, Michael? First, the accusations of cheating, and now this? I don't know who you are anymore. Michael felt like he was drowning, the walls closing in around him. Claire, you have to believe me. I'm being framed. I don't know who's doing this, but I swear I'm innocent. But Claire's trust had been eroded, her faith in him wavering. I want to believe you, Michael. But how can I, when everything seems to point to you being guilty? Michael sat on the edge of their bed, his head in his hands, feeling utterly defeated. He had no idea who was behind the relentless attack on his life, but he knew one thing. If he didn't find a way to stop them, he would lose everything. Emily watched from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over her. She had set her plan in motion, and now Michael was feeling the consequences of his betrayal. She would not rest until his life lay in ruins, just as he had left hers. The downfall had begun, and there was no turning back. Chapter 5. The Final Blow, Scene 1. Social ruin. Emily's plan was in full swing, but she knew she wasn't finished yet. The seeds of doubt had been sown in Michael's professional life, and his marriage was hanging by a thread. Now it was time to turn their shared social circles against him. Emily started by reaching out to mutual friends under the guise of concern. Using a new fake social media profile, she messaged them individually, spinning a web of lies about Michael. She painted him as a pathological liar and a cheat, embellishing her own suffering to ensure they took her seriously. Hey, I thought you should know what's been happening. Michael hasn't been honest with anyone. He's been cheating on Claire and lying about everything. It's really heartbreaking. Each message was crafted to play on their emotions, to make them question Michael's integrity and loyalty. She sent anonymous emails to friends and acquaintances, detailing fabricated stories of Michael's deceitful behavior. I've been hearing some disturbing things about Michael, have you? It's shocking how someone we thought we knew so well could hide so much. Emily didn't stop there. She attended social gatherings where she knew Michael's friends would be, subtly dropping hints and making offhand comments about his supposed indiscretions. She made sure to appear reluctant, as if she was sharing these truths out of a sense of duty and concern. "Did you hear about Michael? It's really sad. I hate to gossip, but people need to know the truth about him." The rumors spread like wildfire. Friends who once stood by Michael began to distance themselves. Invitations to social events dried up, and his phone, once buzzing with messages and calls, fell silent. Everywhere he went, he felt the weight of their judgment, their whispered conversations and averted gazes. Michael's social isolation deepened. Friends he had known for years turned their backs on him, unwilling to be associated with someone who was now seen as dishonest and untrustworthy. He found himself increasingly alone, his support network crumbling. One evening, Michael attended a gathering hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. Instead, he was met with cold stares and awkward silences. Conversations stopped when he approached, and people quickly made excuses to leave his presence. He felt the sting of their betrayal, the crushing loneliness that came with it. At home, the isolation was even more palpable. Claire, already reeling from the accusations of infidelity and embezzlement, had withdrawn completely. They barely spoke, the once warm and loving home now filled with an icy silence. Scene 2. Confrontation. Michael, now jobless, estranged from his family, and shunned by his friends, reached his breaking point. Desperation and anger bubbled within him, and he knew he had to confront the person he suspected was behind his downfall. He had pieced together enough clues to realize that Emily was somehow involved. He drove to her house, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and fear. Emily heard the furious knocking on her door and knew who it was. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation she had been anticipating. She opened the door to find Michael standing there, looking haggard and desperate. "Emily, why are you doing this?" His voice was a mixture of anger and pleading. "Why?" Emily met his gaze, her expression cold and unyielding. "Why? Because you destroyed my life, Michael. Now I'm destroying yours." Michael's fists clenched at his sides, his face contorted with frustration. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't plan for any of this to happen." Emily's eyes blazed with a fierce intensity. "But you did hurt me, Michael. You left me without a word, without an explanation. You built a new life, while I was left to pick up the pieces of ours." Michael took a step forward, his voice rising. "You don't understand. I felt trapped. I couldn't breathe. I needed to get away, to start over." "Start over?" Emily's voice dripped with bitterness. "And what about me? Did you ever think about what you were leaving behind? The pain and confusion you caused?" Michael's shoulders slumped, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "I made a mistake, Emily. I know that now. But this is too much. You've ruined my career, my marriage, my friendships. You've taken everything from me." Emily's expression softened for just a moment, a flicker of the love they once shared crossing her face. But it was quickly replaced by resolve. "And now you know how it feels, to have everything you care about ripped away from you, to be left alone, with nothing." Michael stared at her, the enormity of what he had done and what she had become sinking in. He realized that there was no going back, no undoing the damage that had been done. He had created this mess, and now he was paying the price. "Emily, please, is there any way we can fix this? Can we find some way to move forward?" Emily shook her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and finality. "No, Michael, it's too late for that. You made your choices, and now we both have to live with the consequences." With that, She closed the door, leaving Michael standing on the doorstep, his world shattered beyond repair. He walked away, knowing that the life he had once known was gone forever, destroyed by his own actions and the relentless pursuit of revenge by the woman he had wronged. Emily watched him go, a sense of hollow victory settling over her. She had achieved her goal, but the satisfaction she had hoped for eluded her. The pain of betrayal still lingered, and she realized that in destroying Michael, she had also lost a part of herself. The price of revenge had been high, and she was left to wonder if it had truly been worth it. Epilogue. Michael sat in his empty apartment, the silence almost deafening. The once vibrant and bustling home he had shared with Claire and Lily was now reduced to a barren space filled with echoes of a life that had slipped through his fingers. The only sound was the rustle of the divorce papers Claire had sent him, a final, undeniable testament to the complete and utter collapse of his world. He stared at the papers, the legal jargon blurring before his eyes. Each word seemed to hammer home the reality of his situation. He had lost everything. His career, once a source of pride and accomplishment, was gone, tarnished by false accusations and relentless rumors. His colleagues had turned their backs on him, his reputation shattered beyond repair. The friends he had once trusted and confided in had abandoned him, unwilling to stand by someone now seen as a liar and a cheat. But the most painful loss of all was his family. Claire, the woman he had once loved deeply, had withdrawn from him completely. The warmth and trust that had once defined their relationship were now replaced by cold suspicion and hurt. And Lily, his precious daughter, was no longer a daily presence in his life. The thought of missing her milestones, of not being there to watch her grow, tore at his heart. As he sat there, Michael couldn't help but reflect on how it had all gone so wrong. He had thought leaving Emily and starting over would bring him happiness, a fresh beginning. Instead, it had led him down a path of destruction. He had underestimated Emily's resolve, her capacity for revenge. She had taken everything from him with meticulous precision, leaving him a broken man. Meanwhile, across town, Emily sat in a quiet cafe, nursing a cup of coffee. The last few months had been a whirlwind of planning and executing her revenge, and now that it was over, she felt a sense of hollow satisfaction. She had accomplished what she set out to do. Michael's life was in ruins, just as he had left hers, but the victory felt empty. She had poured so much of herself into her quest for revenge that she had lost sight of who she was. The woman who once found joy in simple pleasures, who loved deeply and trusted completely, was now a stranger to herself. She had become consumed by anger and bitterness, and in the process had lost a part of her own humanity. Emily stared into her coffee, the steam rising in gentle curls. She knew she couldn't continue like this. Revenge had been her driving force, but now it was time to let go. She needed to find herself again, to rebuild her life on her own terms. She had to move forward, not as the vengeful ex-wife, but as a woman determined to reclaim her identity and her peace. With a deep breath, Emily stood up, leaving the cafe and stepping out into the bustling city street. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the buildings and filling the air with a sense of possibility. She walked away from the wreckage of Michael's life, each step a small act of reclaiming her own. It wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but she was resolved to find her way back to the person she had once been. For Michael, the path ahead was uncertain and filled with regret. He had to face the consequences of his actions, to grapple with the pain he had caused and the pain he now felt. The road to redemption, if it even existed, would be long and arduous. He would have to rebuild from the ground up, alone and with the knowledge of his mistakes weighing heavily on his shoulders. In the end, both Michael and Emily were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The story of their downfall was a harsh lesson in the destructive power of betrayal and revenge. As they moved forward, each step taken was a reminder of the past, but also a step towards a future that, while uncertain, held the possibility of healing and redemption.